Hello, hello. Just want to double check and see if people can hear me. If you can, please type a yes in the chat. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. We're just having a slow start to the evening right now. Hi, Oliver. Thanks for saying hi. Excited to have everybody here. I'm also expecting more and more people to filter in. It is a Monday night at the end of the day. So as we're waiting for people to filter in, I'm just going to go ahead and say hi and kick things off really quickly. So my name is Vince. I am the founder and CEO of Press Start Academy. At Press Start Academy, we are reimagining 21st century skills through through play and games. So a lot of our work is centered around designing games and designing play-based experiences. And the learning side is anchored on the 21st century skills, namely the 6 C's. So there is creativity, communication, critical thinking, character, citizenship, and of course, tonight, collaboration. So the reason that we're hosting this series, the Future Skills Roundtable, is because we are on a mission to bring 21st century skills to the mainstream, whether it's to parents in terms of awareness of the fact that soft skills and whole person development is important as academic learning, as well as to educators who are looking for ways to infuse all of these learning opportunities into their classrooms, and of course to students as well, who are looking for newer and more exciting and more hands-on opportunities to develop new experiences. So this is a series that has been going on for the past almost 3 months now. So we are in our second to last session today, which is on collaboration as our 5th C. So today is going to be a very interesting conversation because obviously collaboration is, it spans multiple different disciplines, right? That's the exact, setting and the context for collaboration as a skill. You are reaching towards other pillars and other people and other players to look to work together, to build coalitions, to partner with people, to explore opportunities to work together and build towards greater things and greater futures. So tonight we're going to be talking all about how exactly to do that. This session is going to be recorded because we have a lot of interest in folks who are not able to meet to make our sessions, especially students actually, because it is finals week right now, it is finals period. So we will be sharing a lot of this content and a lot of the nuggets of wisdom that our speakers are going to be sharing with us tonight. With them after the fact. So super excited and stay tuned on all of our social media channels for all of the great content and recaps and wrap-ups that we're going to be producing at the end of this episode, which is what we've been doing for previous episodes as well. So if you have not followed us on social media, it is at Press Start Academy on all socials. Alrighty. So that's a little bit of an intro to the Future Skills Roundtable, as well as to our theme tonight. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers as well. And as I do that, I'm going to invite them to turn their cameras on so that we can all say hi and start the conversation. All right. So first up is Tracy. Tracy, please feel free to turn on your camera and say hi. Hi, Tracy. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so Tracy.
Innovators.
Yes, so Tracy is one of the founding team members at Innovators. She's the current executive director. And I've actually known Tracy for a number of years now. She has so much passion and so much awesome energy and so much vision for building a collaborative education ecosystem in Hong Kong. So it's been great getting to know you, Tracy, and getting to work with you on multiple initiatives. It's an honor to see firsthand the work that you guys are doing with Innovators. It's wonderful. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot from you tonight and picking up some tips and tricks here and there. So thank you for joining us. All right. Next up is Cynthia. If you don't mind turning on your camera and saying hi. So this is Cynthia.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Cynthia is the director at the Mills Fabrica. If you haven't been to the Mills Fabrica, you really should go. It is a state-of-the-art venue over in Chunwan, and Cynthia has a lot of oversight over a lot of the operations that are happening there, mainly the investment platform. And so she works a lot with like cross-sector partners, investing in really cool startups within sustainability and fashion and a lot of other different sectors as well. But she also looks after a lot of the events and programming that happens on site as well. They have a huge focus on sustainability and impact innovation. And so actually I've also known Cynthia for a little bit, and in the time that I've known her, there's always been this, she can't stop talking about cross-sector partnerships. So I'm very excited to have the opportunity to pick her brain a little bit, and why, and just kind of find out why you like talking about this so much. So I'm excited to chat with you, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am compelled to say that if anybody has questions throughout and comments or want to respond, this is a super casual platform for discussion and for conversation. So please feel free to put any thoughts down as we're going along, either in the chat box or in the Q&A. I will be monitoring this throughout, and so yeah, we will just be having a fun conversation. So this is how it's going to go. So I've drafted a couple of questions that both Tracy and Cynthia have on hand as well. So we're going to start off with a couple of them, and we'll see if there are other relevant things that people want to talk about. So please feel free to chime in. But for the time being, I'm going to get started. So it's interesting having you both in this session, because I would say out of the 5, or this is our 5th session right now, this is the first session that I've had with people that I can call very good friends and close collaborators. So there are a lot of things that I want to ask you both. I want to start off actually by veering off something that we've been doing for the past few months, which is talking a lot about career paths and the skill that is in focus. But I really want to understand a little bit more about your work, especially for those of us in the audience and who will be checking in on the recordings. So know exactly the scope that you're covering and why you're doing it, because that's super important for the rest of our discussion. So can I ask you both, starting with Tracy, to just give us a quick introduction of your organization, as well as the vision and the mission of your organizations, and we will go from there. So Tracy.
Yeah, thank you, Vince, for inviting me to join the conversation tonight. So I'm Tracy from Agnovators. We are a charity started in 2015. So Agnovators means education innovators. So pretty much the name already tells like why we are here and what we really want to do. So we believe that actually every education stakeholder is a potential innovator, and we can work together to drive the innovation in education. So it's kind of, we really want to realize a better learning, better future of learning for our young generation. And we see that our kids and our youth really deserve the kind of learning that can support them to realize their potentials, to really like develop their different competencies, to enable them to find their passion in life and even create their own pathways. And so we hope to really enable different people in the education scene to equip themselves with the mindset and also the skills, the capacity to innovate in education based on the needs of the students that we see. So in the past few years, I think our focus started with working with teachers in primary and secondary school first. But then, as Vince just mentioned, we also collaborate with a lot of cross-sector partners and collaborators to reimagine the possibilities of education and how we can develop new kinds of like curriculum, pedagogies, and exciting learning experiences for our students. Yeah. So that's what we have been doing.
That's a very wide scope, and I'm definitely going to ask you to dive into a lot more there. But I'm going to ask Cynthia to do the same as well. So if you can introduce a little bit about your work and the vision and the mission.
Yep, thank you, Vince. Thank you for inviting me to the roundtable tonight. So I'm Cynthia, director of the Mills Fabrica. Some of you probably have been to the Mills in Chunwan, but not many actually know that the Mills Fabrica is actually located in the private building within the same facility. So we are under the Namfung Group, so one of the property developers in Hong Kong. The Mills Fabrica, our work kind of is pretty broad too, but the one-liner is, we want to, leverage the resources that we have on hand and accelerate innovations that we want to see more of in two industries, which is textile, as well as food and agriculture, in order to really make positive change in industries. I don't know if you know, but in fact, textile is actually, I think there's, well, depending on which reports, but is responsible for around 4 to 8% of greenhouse gases globally, whereas food ag is around 30 to 40%. Now, if we add that together, these two consumer industries, we're talking about slightly more than 40% of greenhouse gases of what we emit in the world. So as you could probably imagine, consumer industries are quite polluting. Of course, a lot of the practical, I guess, more conventional old practices we need to change. We want to move the needle of these two industries by really accelerating the innovations that we want to, support in, namely startups and solutions and innovative providers that, we as a private sector, we're able to support them through our investment fund. So a lot of people know us as a VC. We have our venture capital fund. We invest in early stage startups from seed to Series B rounds. We also have our own incubation program. So we support and incubate startups with our network, with people that we know in the industry, with advisory and mentorship, as well as we have spaces. So some of you may have been to our space. We have a co-working event space, our lab, and also our retail store. So to support startups from prototyping to experimentation to commercialization. And so hopefully, we could allocate the resources that we have on hand in order to support the ecosystem a little bit and to make change in consumer industries.
Wow, that's also a lot. But I think there's a lot of common threads, even just from what you both are talking about. Just now, Cynthia, you mentioned ecosystem. And Tracy, a lot of your work involves the ecosystem as well, right? It's working with different partners across the landscape. I was mentioning just now, but I'm going to reiterate the fact that I have heard you both say cross-sector, like all the time, like consistently across the many years that I've known you both. And I think this is quite an interesting point because not a lot of people stress the need for cross-sector work and cross-sector partnerships, especially because, as a lot of us will know, it's quite difficult to work across sectors, right? Everybody has different interests. Everybody has different things that they want to get out of a particular piece of work. Everybody has their own expectations as well and barriers. So this is also a broad question. But I really want to start also by asking why is the concept of cross-sector partnerships so important? Why do you talk about it so much? What drives you to try and clear those hurdles so you can achieve cross-sector work? And I'm going to start with you, Tracy, again.
So I think when we're talking about we imagining the future of education and also building the future of education together. So we believe in the power of co-creation and also kind of collective wisdom. We definitely not only need educators to transform education, because we always say everyone in the society is a stakeholder, and kind of even the grandparents will have some kind of comments on how the education of their kids would be. So it's everyone's business. And even in schools now, they also work a lot with foundations, charities, and there are a lot of funding from corporates to support a development of new education programs. So it's kind of we have a lot of different people who care about education, who really hope to drive change, who really want to like kind of like stretch the imagination and like open up more space for new experimentations and trials. So that's why we really believe in the importance of collaboration. Is kind of we like educators, we respect them a lot and appreciate them a lot for their dedication, their professional knowledge and skills in teaching and learning, and sometimes we need collaboration of different parties. It's kind of, we always say our charity is the bridge, the connectors, to connect the educators in the front line with people from different industries and different backgrounds, so that teachers would know what's happening in the outside world, and also what the outside world would also know, like what is needed in the education scene, in the education context, like what challenges they are facing, and also of course what opportunities that they're having now. And from continuous conversation, understanding, and also idea jamming, and a lot of like communication, and also to get to know each other better, there would always opportunities to stimulate new ideas and then develop new collaborations. Yeah,
I love that. Your charity is a bridge. I'm going to come back to that point. Cynthia, what about you? Why are cross-sector partnerships so important, and what drives you to try to clear those hurdles?
Well, pretty much, I don't believe any one organization or one sector could really move a needle if something's so systemic. Now, Trace has mentioned a lot about education, which is, a huge system, a systemic, whereas, for sustainability, equally speaking, is also a whole infrastructure that involves so many different stakeholders across sectors. And, I think very soon realize within the private sector, we know that we need to work with other sectors in order to move a needle, particular, I'd say, if coming from where I'm at now on sustainability in these industries that we focus on. So if you imagine, give an example, say textile, right? Fashion. We talk about people from across the world. Let's not say cross sectors, from say upstream production, raw material producers, agriculture, land, farmers, to the manufacturing, like factory workers, to what we see in shopping malls, the general public, to working with retailers and brands. Now, what you see in a shopping mall, what you purchase, what you consume, is the works of million pairs of hands. And to be able to really make any change or change the behavior in order to see the change, therefore, I'd say it really isn't down to one sector or one organization. So I think in the work that we do in both sustainability and social impact, you really need to kind of pop your own bubble and just go out there and really learn what each other is thinking, what the win-wins are. And, going back to your question on, what triggers, I think the question is more like, if we don't do it, then do we see any impact at all? So I think it is just a crucial factor, a crucial driver to have any success in driving any key change.
Cynthia, you mentioned a lot of different stakeholders just now, and it's almost like it's a given that we have to work with everybody within like the whole supply chain, within the whole landscape, if we're able to make any change, right? I want to jump into that topic, which is like working with multiple stakeholders. This is a fun fact, not kind of a fun fact, but something that I noticed when looking again at the Mills Fabrica's website and also at Innovators, which I'll touch on. But like, if you go into the Explore with Us tab on the Mills Fabrica website, the dropdown says startup, industry, and public, which basically spans everything. So I want to ask you, and I don't know if you can say this on record, but I'm still going to ask you anyway. If there is one category that is actually secretly the most important to you, how would you prioritize that? And what is the most interesting part of your work, Cynthia, engaging across startups, industry, and the public?
I'd say there is no one standout, secretly supportive of, and the
It's a
most
boring
important.
answer. That's a boring answer.
No, Vince. Well, the thing is, like, if you think about it, right, when I said, we want to change the industry. Now, you just pointed out the three key groups. Of course, there's more. Startups are the ones that, provide a lot of the innovations and the technologies, and they're agile enough, right, to do a lot of experimentation where the industry really needs. Yet, what they lack of course, is resources and funding, and that's why they come to us as an investor and ask for funding and other means of support. Now, talking of industry, that's corporations, that's manufacturers. They have the scale that a startup don't have, right? And the best of all worlds, obviously, is that these innovators and these startups kind of work with these companies because they have the scale and they have the resources, whereas like the startups, they have the innovations and the solutions. I'm not saying that corporates don't have innovations. They do, well, / they need more of, but to be honest, there is just pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses of each. So you can't really say, okay, I can say somebody's laughing. So you can't really say which is more important, because frankly speaking, you really just need to leverage the strengths of each of these sectors and general public. When I said the startup and the corporate side really is the supply side of the economy. The public is the demand side of the economy. You can't really go so crazy and invest in so much like innovations, but at the same time, the general public don't really understand what's going on. And that's actually, if I may, just speak a little bit. That's why I revamped the store, the Fabrica X, at the shop floor, because we want to leverage that arm to do more education and kind of, because let's say this arm of work is really closest to what we have to the general public, besides the startups, the innovations, and also the investment side of things. But because we have this amazing channel to the general public, we will actually want to use it to do what we call kind of experiential learning. I copied you, Vince, of experiential learning, and make it fun to engage with the general public and to speak sustainability, but without going so crazy about really technical language. Now, we need both. We need the demand and the supply side. So, which is why there's no this standout important, most important, whatever. There's no, because you really need both in order to really get the machine moving. And so I'll say no. If I know that's not an answer you want, Vince, but I'll stop there.
So just before I turn to Tracy, I know that you don't want to say that there's any most important stakeholder, but surely there's got to be one part of the work that is most interesting when it comes to engaging these stakeholders, whether it's the education piece, whether it's the investment piece. So if you can't talk about your favorite stakeholder, can you talk about your favorite function or part of the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Can I say two?
Sure. That's better than all.
Well, I mean, I really enjoy, day-to-day interacting, engaging with kind of the innovation part of what we do. Now, we're talking about startups, we're talking about entrepreneurs. I was, since day one, I've been so amazed with all of their ideas and creativity and how they see, how our world can be with things that do not exist yet. And just, it's mind blown. And every time when I'm meetings with these amazing entrepreneurs and innovators, we just need more of them and more of that mindset across sectors, may I say. But then the second stakeholder group, I think that could be because personally, I'm from an FMCG background, so from fast moving consumer goods. I do have this really strong love attachment with the consumers, general public. So because I've spent 7 years on insights and really understanding people's behavior and psychology in shopping, in purchasing and consuming behavior. So that's just kind of my sweet spot when it comes to learning about the market, learning about what people really are looking for, and come up with a solution that of course embeds what you want to see as change to something that they relate with. And so I love going to the store just downstairs and talk to the people there, and also participants that enjoy our workshops and see, hey, you just went through this plastic upcycling workshop, what made you join us? What did you learn from it? And every time when I speak to these actually particular kids, it just surprises me, how fast they learn. And, it's just really cute. Like, kids would go to like beach cleanups before they come to your store because they want to sort out plastics. So, the power of being out there at the storefront and where, the general public is, and see real reactions and direct reactions from people because they meet your work, because they see your content, and you see that direct impact is invaluable. You can't see that elsewhere.
Thanks for sharing. That's super interesting. Obviously, I know firsthand the power of curiosity from kids. We can come back to that a little bit. So Tracy, I want to turn to you now. Just because I've written this down already, I'm just going to say it. I was talking about the drop down on the Mills Fabrica's website, but that's nothing compared to the stakeholders that we see on the Innovators website. Because that's like, it spans literally everyone. So I'm going to read it out: students, teachers, school leaders, policymakers, parents, and community. So that's like the entire education sector right there. So I know you've spoken a little bit about like the need for a broad coverage, but how, like, you mentioned that you are a nonprofit. Obviously there is a limit to, the number of things that you can do on a day-to-day basis. How do you prioritize among these stakeholders? What are the thought processes that you go through with your team? Who is, I wouldn't say who is more important, but how do you arrive at that calculus of, we need to work with these folks first, and this is the way that we work with other folks? So can you walk us through a little bit of that?
So I think we position ourselves as the catalyst. So kind of we are the enabler. Like, we are not an organization with a specific education programs that I have to like transfer to a school team that you have to follow and teach it. Instead, we kind of like work with the stakeholders together, and then because they know the context the best, and the best solutions actually are in the hands of the people who knows the student the best. So we are just like companion, trying to bring a little bit more inspiration or reflection time for them to look inwards and to ask questions, and also to really find the time and space to listen to the needs of the users and different stakeholders, and understand their needs and the pain points and what challenges they are facing, what wishes they have been having for a long time, but still couldn't manage to realize. But then they really hope to find solutions for it. So we start with this like empathy process. And then I think everyone wants to be heard and also to be listened. And when you start with this first step, they would have the perception that, you really care about what they care about. You're not just coming to me saying that what I want to do. So I think why we want to set kind of the reach, we actually built up our reach bit by bit throughout the past years. So we didn't manage to reach so diverse stakeholders at the very beginning. But when we first started, we already set the goals that through enabling different innovators. It's kind of like the pay it forward concept. So I enable one teacher, and then when he or she is back to the school, definitely he or she will have to work with the parents of the kids. They will have to exchange with teachers and professors from universities and other schools, and there would be time that we have to interact with schools with people from the school sponsoring bodies or from the education bureau. So I think like we start with empathy. We try to include the voices of everyone. We listen to them and we respond to them. And then we also try to create or find a space together to start with something small, to start with the small steps, and then we can realize the small steps and small imagination together. And then when people can see the quick wins or like the easy to implement prototypes, and then definitely they will also see the impact on the students. And when they see the changes in the students' face, and that also motivate them to keep going, influence other people to join the community, and then also attract the other stakeholders to really come and see what they are doing, how can they make the difference, and why this can happen, why we can move away from the traditional ways of teaching and learning, and then we can realize of new types of teaching and learning that really engage the youth. So it's kind of, yeah, it's also the very early stage that we set the intention we hope to involve every stakeholder. But I think throughout the past years, we also have done a lot of reflection, and more we think that when we want to innovate in education, we actually also have to listen more to the students. So even though we work along with teachers, school sponsoring bodies, and sometimes collaborate with charities and social enterprises, we also work with Education Bureau and funders, and I have to say, the stakeholder that we treasure most, and we think we should really like put the most focus on, would be the students, our real users in education. And we also have to trust that the solutions don't come from us, kind of like adults talking education, but a lot of solutions and also creative ideas, and also the ways that we to innovate that we couldn't imagine before. A lot of the inspiration actually comes from the students. So how to include student voices, how to even engage them to design the teaching and learning. We already see some teachers, teaching team doing this. It's kind of like teachers taking a step back, parents taking a step back, that they build the stage, create the space for the students, the young kids, the youth, to generate the ideas to improve education.
You just went through a lot of stuff there, but I feel like it's kind of like a natural point, knowing you and knowing your work, that you ended up having a favorite stakeholder. I wouldn't say a favorite, but like the most important stakeholder, because obviously, especially for us as well, working in education, that's the primary target, the primary stakeholder it is all for the students, right? And so I think actually this links pretty well to the next question that I have prepared, because at the top of the session, when we were kicking things off, I was introducing the need for a Future Skills Roundtable and the interest that a lot of people have, parents, educators, students alike, in the 21st century skills. And so I want to take this opportunity to also expand beyond just our theme of collaboration. And this is something that I actually didn't plan on doing at the beginning of the series. It's just that this has been a natural progression of how these conversations have gone. Just like the Sustainable Development Goals, it's quite hard to separate the particular C's within 21st century skills, so neatly from each other. There's a lot of linkages between. So as an example, in our first session on character, we touched a lot on communication. In our third session on critical thinking, we touched on creativity. And even just now, Tracy, you're mentioning, empathy and going through the innovation process. I mean, I know from working with innovators that you are a huge believer in design thinking. And actually, in previous sessions, we've talked to, our last session on creativity, we're talking about design and the, how do you attach a structure to what normally people think of as an organic process, right? So I think there's a lot of commonalities across the different streams. So I want to, dive a little bit deeper here. First, I'm going to turn to Cynthia, and I'm going to ask how you approach your collaborations. Now, you work with startups, you work with industry, you work with the community. You mentioned you like talking to the kids who are going through your workshops. But when it comes to working with industry, working with startups, do you have a process behind these conversations? Do you have a strategy? So for example, do you align on like goals first? Do you get to meet the person first? Do you think about what you want to achieve together and then work backwards? What's your general process?
That's a great question. I actually think that, strategies and knowing the organization and what they do is basic homework. But to be honest with you, I think, we're all human. And sometimes it really it is just the one thing. Always think win-win. And I often come across, a lot of these meetings where, you have different people and everyone talks, but at the end of it, you don't know what the outcomes are. And I think it really is important to listen, to understand, and instead of just listen to respond. I see that, a lot of times where people just go on and on, but you don't really engage with them because you know that, you're not relating with them, you're not relating to them, and you just know that they're not listening, although they thought they are, right? And so I think I really go back to actually Tracy's point, empathy. It's a very powerful, it's a superpower, I'd say. The ability to listen and listen for real, and let the person that you're speaking to know that you're listening and that they are understood. It's the crucial thing in any setting, personal or work. And so, yes, we can talk strategy. I know that I'm from a strategic background. I know that with the work that I do, I talk strategy all the time, but it is basic. But the most important thing is be human and just really understand where people are coming from. So of course, in the natural business setting, you have all these amazing PowerPoints and those, of course, you could appear, your first impression is important, right? That you appear to be very ready, and you can talk strategy. But again, going back to the point that, as you speak, are you really relating to the individual who's listening to you? If you realize that he or she is dozing off and snoozing off, where's the snoozing off? How can you re-engage them and really speak a language that they understand and align with you? So, thinking win-win and really thinking about what really intrigues the individual and also what they are really thinking. So often, again, on a business setting, you'll be talking about, hey, what are your strategies for next year? Is there something that we can cross-collaborate? And best, we don't, create something from scratch. Are we able to write on each other's platform something that you're already building? Best is that, and then let's curate and let's co-create, let's develop on something that you're already building and make it a bigger bang. And so that's often what I would tend to do. But the problem happens, or that there's always the awkward situation when somebody just give you the awkward face and probably not responding to what you're talking. Then you really need to focus on actually building trust. Really, there's no point of going on and on about strategies and you thought that you're going to end up with a great collaboration and partnership, but that this person don't trust you. So it doesn't really matter, really. It's all down to building trust, building rapport, thinking win-win, and being able to relate, and then you go strategy. Strategy to me is homework, is basic work. But what really is meaningful and impactful is when you can really relate and engage with somebody that you're talking to.
So I'm hearing, I mean, that's kind of the standout for me, is the strategy is the homework. What happens in the conversations, the meetings is the human connection, right? I'm curious if Tracy, if you see, if you're aligned, if this is a similar approach to, that you take, or do you approach it differently?
I think we share similar mindset and also ways of seeing and doing things. And I think when we work with different collaborators, it's we know that they all have they're all facing different situations. They have their own kind of backgrounds and expertise, and also the things that they really care about, the needs that they are having. the pain points that they're having. But when we are like doing a lot of like different conversations or professional development and workshops or with educators or parents or like cross-sector participants, and I think when it comes to the growth and learning of the young generation, of the kids, of the youth, we will always get to the point that what we really want for our students. Like if we can first take away all the with practical constraints or kind of like the concerns on the resources or on different things first, like what the people that are there in the teaching team or like different stakeholders come together, and then we'll spend a lot of time and conversation on understanding the student needs, and then also communicating, having conversation about reaching consensus, what we really want to bring to the students and what we really want to see in them, the learning and the growth in them in the next academic year or in the few years to come. How we imagine that, like how we imagine the young person starting from the time that they walk into the schools or getting into the classroom, interacting with teachers, communicating with parents, like what would the journey be? And then usually like when having this kind of conversation, imagining, communicating, understanding, allying, and then there would come a time that people think like the different pictures that in the minds of different people, there are some points that they actually have some similar things and areas. And that's the common areas that every one of us care about. So then we can come to the consensus, why not we start from there? Seems that would be the most like pressing point for us to come together and work on it and identify solutions for it. And usually it would be the magical moment that the small teams or even the bigger team would reach the consensus. We once had an experience doing this kind of like conversation and reflection with the teaching team of the whole school. So it's kind of 60 teachers teaching in different subjects and having different domains, having different concerns. And then they first like shadow students for a day, like understand how their life is in a day, and also talk to their parents and different people. And then coming back, all the 60 teachers share their observation. And then they really find that like, even though they are in different classes, they are having different, they had different experience, but then they share some kind of like similar observation. And then that's how they would start from there.
I love that. I mean, that's a really great example of, how observation and that empathy process is able to bring different stakeholders together, right? I mean, actually, you already answered my next question for you, Tracy, which was, finding an example to get different stakeholders past their differences and coming together on a vision. So I think that this actually leads quite nicely to a question that Tina just put in the chat. Speaking of engaging, different people that are involved in different parts of the process. So, since the question was to Cynthia, I'll ask that to you first. And also because Tracy just talked a little bit about that already. So Cynthia, as the catalyst of a large scale innovative movement, how much of the initial direction, structure, inspiration comes from you? How do you get others significantly involved in different parts of the process, especially communities who tend to get forgotten and overlooked?
If you talk about the Mills Fabrica, obviously, I was not, the initiator. So I took the role from January this year. So I've just been here for less than a year. So founder Vanessa, it was her original idea. I think what really is important though, during any processing of new ideas though, it is definitely a team's team's work, never just a one person's work. Yes, we do have like individuals that have great ideas and creativity, but it does take the whole team to really execute and implement it. And so in fact, throughout these ideation process, I would personally, at least, I would strongly encourage them and anybody, including myself, to talk to as many different stakeholder groups that are related to the idea or to the project as much as possible, so that we could really understand. I always say, right, ideas are cheap, but execution is king. You need to come up with something, a product, a service, or whatnot, that works for the people that you're serving, and you can't really produce something that you don't know what these their needs are. And so it's really important that you involve as many stakeholders that are related to the project, obviously, as possible. And meanwhile, as you develop the ideas, if time permits, engage them in the process too. So I love curation, I love co-creation, and so being able to involve them in the ideation and the development process is great, because by the end, once this is out there in the market, or once it's deployed or launched, these people will be your first adopters, without a doubt. You don't even need to do a lot of marketing. They'll come to you because they feel they belong. And so it really is a team's work, but what's most important is really know who you're serving. Of course, in impact and charity and NGO and kind of this civil sector of the world, we talk about beneficiaries, but it's the same. It's the same language. In the business world, we talk about stakeholders. And so it really is going back to who you're serving, what their needs are, and stick to the brief, so not to go off a tangent. It's all the same. It's just a different language at the end of the day.
So what I'm hearing is, the inclusion of stakeholders is actually intentional. You want to do this at the beginning so that you're intentionally looping everybody into that same conversation, so that you are mindful throughout, and you're taking their participation and their feedback throughout.
Yeah, and then the fine balance though between not getting too many people, because it does boggles down to kind of the timing thing, like kind of you can't really decide with like 100 people in the loop. But it is important to get as much feedback as possible and kind of pull out their brains once in a while to make sure that they're in the process. And I'm sure for people that you work with, they also understand that you have a timeline to catch. So I think having that fine balance and knowing that ideas are great, but not not the king. The king really is execution, and execute and implement something that is done with them and for them, and that's very important. Yeah.
I wonder, Tracy, if you have anything to add to that, because you have to sift through a lot of feedback and you're hearing a lot of input from all the different stakeholders that you're working with. So maybe for you, because you're intentionally including a lot of people within the ecosystem already in your work, how does that get translated into the execution bit? Because there is the prioritization of whose feedback are we listening to? How does your vision and how does your intention play into that? So how do you grapple with this decision-making process?
So we also, I think I agree with what Cynthia said. We of course we connect a lot of feedback from different stakeholders and also users, but we also plan for the process. It's kind of like we know at this stage we need to understand how it is going on in the sector, how the kind of new policies have influenced people in the sector. So we'll identify some representatives, key people that we really want to talk to. Sometimes it would be a few more progressive principals, or sometimes it would be more like a few more progressive teachers, or just randomly picking a few students from different levels that to see how they think about it. And when after hearing so many different feedbacks and needs and ideas, and we also try to categorize and analyze the feedback, and also decide that if there's some kind of common concern or something that is really like significant and important that is reflected from the different feedback that we have connected. Usually we can draw some kind of connection from the feedback that is from different perspectives. Then when we have the insight, so-called like we did the analysis and we have the insights from the feedback, then we will then have a lot of discussion about how it relates to the mission or the kind of change that we want to create and we really want to see. And one example is that like when the COVID came, of course, there are a lot of crises and a lot of needs in the sector. So some teachers would come to us saying that, oh, at the beginning of the COVID, they would say, oh, we need a lot of like iPads and we need a lot of different kind of technological support. And then we also need a lot of like material support for the parents and for the families. But then we will know, okay, we see a lot of different needs. Then we still have to come back to ask ourselves like what our strengths are, like what the foundation that we have built, what knowledge and experiences and network that we can leverage to put into good use, and how can we really help the best with our like time and resources and the legwork and the community that we have built that we can mobilize to support. So when we start to think from this perspective, then we would know probably there will be some other organizations that provide the iPads or provide that kind of technological support. They would do it the best. But then we, with combining our experience, our strengths and our expertise, and also in response to the pressing needs that we see, seems like that, okay, we would stay focused on enabling teachers' capacity, facilitating the sharing of experience in the community so that they can learn from each other in a very short time. So it's kind of leveraging the experience and wisdom of different people instead of just following one solution and direction. So yeah, this is the process, usual process that we would see. Yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing. Time flies. It's already 8 o'clock. So you know, this has been a very fascinating conversation. And you know, it's actually I was thinking that we had a pretty quiet crowd tonight, but that's a good thing because you know I still have one more question to go through, and so we can just go with that, and that's going to be right on time. Thank you both so much for taking the time to share a lot of like really thoughtful insights. So in our past sessions, we've had a lot of you know quite a few students actually who have dialed in, and so you know tonight maybe a lot of them are you know working on final papers and things like that. But I am going to ask a question on their behalf because I feel like a lot of them have been quite curious in terms of how to apply these skills within their own context, right? Whether it's working on projects, whether it's you know stepping into a work environment for the first time and navigating an internship environment or something like that. So I'm going to ask about not just cross-sector collaborations, right? Inter-organization collaborations, but more on intra-organization collaborations and how you approach that, right? So a large part of it is the communication piece, obviously. I mean, you both have spoken a lot about that too. But I just want to ask if, you know, if you can share some tips on how to communicate your vision, how to motivate your teammates so that you can achieve that collaboration within your own organization, because we've got to take care of our own before we go out there. So Tracy, can I start with you? Any tips on communicating, motivating your team, your organization around a shared vision?
The first thing would be trust. I think particularly for these few years, like we have been facing a lot of changes in the education sector, and I always tell my team that I believe like each of them there's a reason behind why they would like to get into the education field. and also join our organization. So every one of my teammates would have their own like imagination or a specific areas of in education that really touch their heart, and they really would like to dedicate their time and efforts and spend energy to realize the pictures in their mind. So the vision of Agnovators is not the vision of the founders or the founding team. The vision of Agnovators is also a fluid kind of like, we know the ultimate goals, the vision to go, but then how we get there is a fluid journey. That is also a path that co-create with everyone in the team together. So I would say, I would tell the team that like, we don't have one hero in our team. So we don't have one kind of like founding person or founders that drive the development. So everyone in our team is a hero that contributing and shaping the next step and the future of our organization. So we hope through Agnovators, we create the space, not just for teachers, parents, or other stakeholders outside of our organization to realize their education dreams. It's also internally, every one of us can also contribute their own dreams and also expertise and skills and work together and make the dreams bigger. So we spend a lot of time and efforts to communicate. It's like towards the end of each year, we will do a lot of reflection and sharing on insights and learning, and then we will share and also co-create the steps or the strategies and also the ways of doing and living as a community together, as a team together, how we want to go forward. So so if it's about like motivating, I think the best motivation comes from the intrinsic drive. So it's not someone telling you what to do, but I find that like I can realize what I really want to do. And in an organization, in a space that he or she thinks like they can really like make things happen. They really have the trust, they really have the space. They can really try something out, and it's okay to fail. We can just learn together, and then we share the learnings and insight, and then we keep going on. So it's a lot about public, it's a lot about communicating the trust and also creating the space and actual actions for the trust and also things to happen. And also it's a lot about building a culture that like everyone can really like contribute, feel safe to make things happen, feel safe to try. We celebrate the success together, and then we also acknowledge each other from the on the learnings that we share together. Yeah.
I know that you were mentioning earlier before we started the session that you just finished your year-end reflection with your team today. So this must be pretty fresh in your memory. In fact, we're planning to do our own this in a couple of days within my team. So I'm quite looking forward to that. I'm going to steal what you said, though. Everybody is a hero. There's no one single hero. I love that. Cynthia, over to you. So how do you communicate and motivate your team and, you know, galvanize everybody so that the intra-organization collaboration happens first?
I actually relate a lot to what Tracy just said there. Trust is the key, fundamental, is the foundation of it all. So I think throughout, do what you can to build that trust and rapport with the team. Now, what that also means is to, you know, being able to trust your team to deliver what they're great at. So, have really clear ownership and have really clear accountability and responsibility, and have, your vision painted so clear that they know what their work is contributing towards and it's a shared vision. So you have to say, for example, I have a team of 20 now. How would I be able to, paint a very clear path for each and every one of the individuals in the team, and that they know very well what they're contributing to. So I think that's very important, though, of course, giving the flexibility and also enabling the team doesn't mean that, it's got nothing to do with you. You got to jump in when things go sour or go to different directions. And I think sometimes when the team, calls for help, you're there, and that's very important when you need to show not just like kind of instant support, but also instant feedback, and just be very honest. And you don't need to do it in front of everybody. You can always, pull people aside, and so that it doesn't, hit their egos. But but important to be real and be frank with people. I tend to focus on strengths. So, what I love doing is to find what each and every individual is great at doing, and find, their world and what they, the project that they can own. And so I love, doing, say, for example, hey, we have Vince and we have Tracy. This project is your baby, and, whoever has questions, please go to them. They know best. They're an expert in this. And so I think people really relate when they see what their work and how their work relates to the shared vision, and as well as, being called the domain expertise in what they do, and be proud and feel that, they're really contributing to the vision and to the organization. So I think, good teams are interdependent versus dependency. Everyone, relies equally on each other, on their expertise and knowledge, and have a very clear kind of path that they know, where we're striving for, what the clear objectives are, and how we kind of assess those and successes. And I think at the end, as also Tracy mentioned as well, celebrate small wins, acknowledge that, people are doing great things, great work, and, celebrate to, and, aim higher by celebrating small wins. I think that's really great. So that's why I have a gong, so it's here so that, the teams who, have, oh, somebody shows me a heart. I love it. So it's here so that for anybody who, strike a good deal, strike a good partnership, they can hit the gong. So it's a very special, magical gong here, where anybody has, their right and their chance to hit if they have a great partnership and a great deal. So I think, all in all, is building trust, have ownership, paint a few, very clear pathway and kind of clear picture on who and how they're delivering towards the shared vision, and celebrate small wins.
Well, thank you for sharing. We have just 4 minutes left. We have a couple questions. I guess we won't have enough time to get through both of them because we've been very good about letting everybody go right on time. So I'm going to address one of them. So just really quickly, like a lightning answer, I guess, from both of you, is the second question, which is on the milestones and the things that you notice in people that will let you think, oh, I want to continue working with this person, or I don't want to continue working with this person. There's a lot of, you both are speaking a lot about within your teams, within different collaborators. How do you consistently make those observations? What are the inputs that you take? And, how do you process all of those? Cynthia, let's start with you.
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that question?
Sure.
It sounds very complicated.
It does sound very complicated. It's a lot about how you observe people, how you read people in terms of whether you want to continue working with them or not work with them. So are there red flags, for example, that turn you off from working with somebody, or are there green flags that will, that get you excited about continuing to work with them?
Okay, in a chat like this, let's talk about red flags. I think people like to know, I can see that one of those questions, highlighted capital letters, harms, I think, red flags, ultimately, we're all human. Once again, if you feel that, you know, somebody just doesn't respect, if there's no respect, if there's no trust, if there's, well, trust, you know, you need time to build, but sometimes respect, it's like, you know, day one, the first second you feel that somebody's not respecting you, then try to understand why. Sometimes there could be like misconceptions, miscommunications, but if they just, you know, individual that just doesn't respect anybody, then goodbye. But then I think second is really, are we able to, you know, find the right win-win? I think sometimes just be honest with each other and say, hey, you know, I think we can maybe explore next year or like 2 years, 3 years later, because currently we don't really see, you know, this room to collaborate yet, but I'm sure that there are times and when we kind of our interests or like our goals will collide a bit more, then maybe we could pick up that conversation again. I felt that sometimes we're not good at saying no, but also, you know, actually being able to say no and be upfront, it is a superpower, because often, actually 99%, it is because the person that you speak to, they don't know how to say no. And they come up like really random things and say, oh, let's follow up on that. But like after 2 weeks, no email, no message, and you're like, okay, so, you know, we haven't really found that kind of sweet spot yet. So, you know, it's fine, you know, be honest and just go, hey, let's do another time. And I think that it really helps with building trust as well, because, you know, having a good partner also means that this person is not wasting your time and that, you know, we acknowledge the value of each of us. And so if we don't see it yet, it doesn't mean that we won't see it forever. It's just not the right timing. And I think also thirdly is sometimes when the individual don't actually really know what they're looking for, it's really hard to find a common goal when, you know, someone doesn't really have a really clear goal. And it's okay to also admit that it's not your responsibility to help them find their goals. So I think you just be very frank and be honest. And I treasure, and I think, you know, each and every one of us here, at least, treasure honesty and just valuing each other's time. And I think most importantly also is to not judge. It's very hard to not judge, but, you know, sometimes, you know, having many, let's say there's been multiple occasions where I realized that coming from a private sector, and I have to say it, you know, truthfully, I've experienced it multiple times, other sectors, you know, civil, public, even private, sometimes have this assessment and this judgment on you and say, hey, you don't know how to speak the language, you stay in private sector. I've experienced this from education. I've experienced this from NGOs. Okay, there's another laughing emoji there. You probably have experienced this too. And so I think, you know, just be open and be human. And sometimes when somebody expresses their interest, although not their forte and not their strength, and may not come from that background, does not mean that they don't have the right passion to do something amazing. That's probably coming from a very personal experience multiple times, that I get like judged very easily. Oh, because you're from the commercial world, you make money, you make profits, you don't speak impact, don't talk to me. And so, you know, just have an open mind and just treat others as, you know, how you want to be treated.
I love how I asked for a lightning answer and you just went off because you love your red flags. My God, I just wanted to frame this question in a more constructive, positive way. And like, you're just talking about like red flags. I want to quickly turn to Tracy for the actual lightning answer. If you have anything to add on green flags, red flags before we wrap up.
Okay. So for green flags, I think in education, we need to have a genuine interest in people and a genuine interest in their growth and learning. What I'm saying here is really everyone, not just the kids and also the youth, the students, but we also have this kind of belief in our partners, our collaborators, that we're here to learn and explore together. So this kind of genuine interest and trust and the share like curiosity to keep exploring and learning together, because the world is really changing fast and we really don't know everything. So we also need to have a humble mind to know that we don't know so we just come together and ask questions and reflect together, and probably we can try something out together. And also that probably wouldn't work, but why not just try together? And it's still a like continuous learning process. So we always say, like, when we are doing education, the core element of education is about learning and growth. So we cannot just do education to the other people. We have to embed this kind of learning and growth in ourselves first. So the green flag will be we see like kind of like different people and parties that we share this same kind of passion and interest, and we have this open-mindedness to really like explore, collaborate. Sometimes we have to compromise, of course, or just identify the middle path that we can have win-win, but then we learn from each other. And the time that we really have to say no or stop the collaboration would be the time that it's too one-sided, and there's no room for exploration and co-creation. And it's maybe at the very beginning when the contest start, or maybe in the process that we start to get to know more and more, that it seems like it's just really a very one-sided thing. It's not really the kind of like open communication, embracing difference, and identify things that we can work together. Then probably it's time to stop. Yeah.
Well, speaking of time to stop, it is almost time for us to wrap up. And so, Cynthia, I think we have to celebrate this small win because we just finished. Yeah, exactly. So.
Okay, I need to tell my colleague first because I'm a freak out. Well, how are you? Then what happened? Okay, do I do this now? Okay. If I get the mic closer.
Do it again. Do it again. That was kind of weird.
Wait. Okay.
I mean, yes-ish. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe the mic distorted it a little bit. But yeah, we saw,
right?
It was kind of distorted actually.
Okay, I need to bring it like right in the face then. So good now.
Sure.
Well, let me survive then. Sorry, guys. You know,
Yeah.
you come in the office and hit the gong.
Okay. Well, maybe it was just you know, being careful to our ears. Anyway, thank you both, Tracy and Cynthia, for spending your Monday evenings with us. I learned a lot. It's really interesting to hear your insights and your perspective on cross-sector collaboration and also intra-organization collaboration. So before I let everybody go, I do have to quickly do a shout out for our last final session in this 6-part series. Actually, it's happening next week. So there's been a couple of changes due to speaker availability. Next week is going to be our final session, December 19th, exact same time. We're going to be speaking about citizenship. We have 2 guests, both of whom actually do work in sustainability, Walden of Unspun and Natalie of Bear. And I'm looking forward to picking their brains on global citizenship when it comes to, you know, civic engagements, sustainability, and all of those things. So if you're interested, I hope you will join us also for next Monday. And thank you once again, Tracy, Cynthia. Thank you for staying 7 minutes after. This is actually the longest that any of our episodes have gone. So I appreciate that, and also appreciate everybody for staying just a little bit longer. And yes, we will have to come by and visit your gong sometime. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.